Hello, and welcome back to Umineko. When last we left off, people were dealing with the aftermath of finding 6 dead bodies. And they were starting to get a little suspicious of each other as well. So let's see what happens. Lunch ended, and the servants removed the tableware and went to the kitchen. The wind and rain neither weakened nor strengthened, and the island remained cut off from the outside world. At first, it seemed as though Natsuhi planned to stop anyone from taking a step outside their room. But when it came time to prepare lunch, she finally realized this would be impossible. However, in order to avoid having anyone alone in the kitchen, she told the 3 servants to go together. Because of that, the servants were the first ones given the right to leave the stuffy parlor, which had been packed with 11 people. Since breakfast had immediately followed that terrible incident, preventing most of us from eating much, everyone tore into their lunches in silence. "I will wash the dishes, so you can rest a while, Canon-kun, Genji-san. Do you want something to drink?" "I don't need anything. Canon?" "I don't need anything either." "You two must have been so busy, and so early in the morning. It's no wonder you're worn out." The only noise was that of Kumasawa washing the dishes, which resounded throughout the kitchen. Genji and Canon sat in some chairs a short distance away, their eyes lightly closed. Just as Kumasawa had said, those two had probably built up a great deal of fatigue. But that didn't mean they could let it show in front of their relatives. Avoiding that was one of their virtues. After the silence had continued for some time, Canon opened his mouth and muttered, "Shannon, why did she have to die in such a horrible way?" "Forget about the manner of her death. It was nothing more than bad luck." "You're right. It was nothing more than bad luck." They both fell silent once again. Canon's expression was filled with grief. "To think that Shannon-chan's actually dead. I still can't believe it. Poor thing. Not being able to see her again feels like a lie. I just wanted to see her smiling face one more time." Kumasawa spoke with her back facing them. After all, Kumasawa hadn't seen Shannon's corpse, so she had no trouble mentioning Shannon's face. When Canon heard those words, it reminded him again of how only half of Shannon's face had been left, and his grieving expression twisted even further. "Why did Beatrice-sama do that to Shannon? If she wanted a sacrifice, there were plenty of others to choose from. Why? Why?" "It was nothing more than bad luck. If we were less lucky, you or I might have been lying out there, instead of Shannon. Or it could have been someone else entirely. Everything is left to fate." "Genji-sama, you said the door to Madame's room was stained with traces of something like blood, right? The same substance that was painted on the shutter?" "Indeed. It was an unsettling mark. Almost as though someone with blood-stained fingers had been trying to pull out the doorknob. No, scratch through the door. That sort of unpleasant mark." "So does this mean Beatrice-sama came to visit Madame's room and tried to open the door, but couldn't?" Genji thought back to the time he had seen those traces of blood on the door to Natsuhi's room. With the substance sticking to the door around the doorknob, and the marks of something scratching against the door, it had definitely appeared as though someone had tried to open the door, but couldn't. How did the madam avoid being chosen as a sacrifice? If only she'd been chosen, Shannon wouldn't have had to die. Just then, a loud, sharp noise came in from the hall. Both of them turned around, surprised. That's a pretty interesting chat you're having there. Let me join in too. Before any of the servants realized that Battler was standing in the doorway to the kitchen. Battler-sama, how rude of us. Genji-san and Kanon-kun stood up, surprised, and hastily bowed. But I didn't care about stuff like that. I was more concerned with continuing their discussion. I told them I was going to the bathroom, so they let me go. I thought I'd suffocate if I was locked up in that room any longer. I was about to come ask you guys for some water, but then I overheard something pretty interesting. You don't need to bow your heads or anything. Please, let me hear the rest. That just now wasn't really... I've been listening to you for a while. Don't try to hide it now. So I'll ask directly. Who is this Beatrice? She's supposed to be a witch from a kid's story, but it doesn't look that way now. Kanon-kun averted his gaze. It was obvious that he didn't want to talk about this, which only made me want to ask even more. While making an effort to smile, I grabbed the collar of his shirt. Last night, this would have been none of my business. But after this morning, everything's changed. Now that Dad and the rest have been killed, this is totally my business. I have the right to listen to this suspicious story, don't I? I glared into Kanon's eyes as he continued to avert his gaze in apparent pain. Since there was a big difference in our heights, Kanon had to stand on his toes, and it looked like it hurt a bit. Battler-san, please let go of him. Kanon-san isn't really hiding anything. Then you won't have any problem talking about it, right? It's lonely being out of the loop, you know? When I tried to further twist up his collar, Genji-san cut between us and spoke. In his expression were faint traces that he'd made up his mind to do something. Apparently, he had no intention of hiding it. I can tell you about it. Kanon only hesitated because you might have taken it badly, Battler-sama. Hesitating, huh? Not very manly of you. Whatever it is you're talking about, it's even more unpleasant having it kept secret. Tell me about it. It's not like we have anything better to do before tomorrow comes. A slightly spooky story might be the best way to avoid getting bored. Genji-san and Kanon-kun looked at each other, then nodded, as though they'd decided to talk. Understood. Please ask us anything. We will talk. Right. Then I'll ask. Who in the world is Beatrice? All I know is that she's a witch who lives in the forest of Rokkenjima. I've heard it's a story grandmother or someone invented to keep people out of the dangerous forest. Is that wrong? No, it isn't wrong. It's as you say. Beatrice is a witch who dwells in the forest of Rokkenjima. Battler-sama, I don't expect you to believe this all of a sudden. But Beatrice-sama exists. She is a real person. The one who gave the master a vast amount of gold and who worked by his side for many years. Huh? Come on! Is grandfather paying you to repeat everything he says? I laughed like it was a joke, but neither Genji-san nor Kanon-kun laughed. Not even Kumasawa-bachan, who was avoiding my eyes, flustered as she started washing the dishes. So, unfortunately, I was the only one laughing. Painfully. Bitterly. I see. That's why Genji-san refused to mention it. If you really mean it, of course I'd take it badly. So, You're saying that a person named Beatrice actually exists?
Yes. She has been working for the Master since before the mansion was built on this island. She has most likely been working for him even longer than I have.
What do you know? Kiryu-san's theory was off. Grandfather really did have a confidant called Beatrice? Is that person on the island now?
Yes. I believe that she is here.
That's a vague way to say it. I guess that means you haven't seen her face today or yesterday.
That is correct. It is extremely difficult to say, but...
Kanonkan once again dropped his gaze, avoiding my eyes. Come on, don't just stop there. That's like freezing an inch before the blow, right? I urged him on jokingly again. However, it looked like Kanon was still confused as to whether he should speak or not. Then, Kumasawa Bachan whispered.
Ho ho ho. You cannot see her face, because Beatrice-sama has no form.
She has no... What did you say?
Beatrice-sama has no body. Therefore, unless Beatrice-sama wishes it, common people like us are not able to see her form. I have heard that the portrait shows what Beatrice-sama looked like back when she had a human form. It seems he yearned for that figure so much, he would often stand in front of that portrait. Ho ho ho. Beatrice-sama sometimes shows herself by changing her form into glittering butterflies. On the rare occasion that you spot them somewhere in the mansion, there is a rule that you absolutely mustn't chase after them. It is whispered that you will meet with disaster if you do. In fact, there was a servant who broke that rule and quit because of a great injury.
Wait a sec, are you kidding me? Are you all serious about this?
Battler-sama, Beatrice-sama has already arrived. Such language may be unwise. Beatrice-sama does not like it when she is profaned. If you doubt her existence, you will shortly meet with disaster. Battler-san, you probably find this topic unpleasant. But you know what? Beatrice-sama does exist. She exists. Beatrice-sama hates people who doubt that. Can't you tell, Battler-sama? Beatrice-sama has already arrived here.
Come on, quit it. I'm weak against that stuff. Enough with the cheap threats.
However, there was no trace of a joke in the eyes of the three servants. On the surface, I laughed and tried to look unconcerned, but I was quickly starting to sober up. Their eyes were also sobering up fast. Battler-san, I beg that you stop profaning Beatrice-sama. Please trust me.
Kumasawa Bachan, who was usually cheerful and would always tease people, now spoke with a totally serious face. Well, even if you say she exists, I don't see anything. Are you trying to say she's standing right next to me or something? Quit joking around.
Just then, that unnerving laugh suddenly filled the kitchen. When I turned around, Maria was standing there by the entrance. But her expression and the feeling about her presence, felt exactly the same as the servants. Whether your wavelength matches or not is determined at birth. Battler, you were born with a mismatched wavelength. That's why you can't see her. That's why you can't meet with her. And that's why you can't talk to her. You're the type Beatrice hates the most. Maria laughed like it was funny, but it sounded extremely eerie. It was almost like she was laughing at me because I alone didn't understand. Do you want to know about Beatrice? Beatrice is a 1,000-year-old witch. With all of the demons at her command, she can harness the power of alchemy to create the Philosopher's Stone and a vast quantity of gold. Grandfather built up all the vast wealth of the Ushuramiya family by making a contract with her. Yesterday, I read Beatrice's letter, didn't I? That was real. Well, I guess it's pointless for me to try and force you to believe. After all, it looks like you were born without a trace of the sixth sense. What are you talking about? Witches? Demons? Who told you about that? I heard it from Beatrice herself. Maria kept doing that unpleasant laugh. However, the servants who watched over this didn't even blink. She heard it from that witch in the portrait adorning the entrance hall. Maria kept on laughing in a weird voice, as though this was nothing more or less than the truth. Maria, it might be rude to ask, but I'll ask one more time, okay? Who gave you that letter yesterday? I got it from Beatrice. How many times must I tell you before you understand? You don't get it, do you? You can't see it. You can't believe it, can you? Just then, Maria's laughter suddenly stopped. Battler, you still don't understand? Beatrice-sama exists. She exists, you say, but where? Like I said, Beatrice-sama exists here. That's right. Now that I think about it, I've been feeling for a while now that the servants' eyes haven't been pointed in quite the right direction. I'd figured they were just staring absent-mindedly, but that wasn't the case. The four here, Genji-san, Kanon-kun, Kumasawa-san, and Maria, everyone except me, was looking at a spot right behind me. Holding my breath tightly, I slowly looked over my shoulder. Of course, there wasn't anyone there. I've known that the whole time. However, everyone in the room except me was focusing on that point, as if there was someone there. Beatrice is the mighty golden witch who has lived for 1,000 years. But since she can't show her form to humans of the wrong wavelength, she can't talk to them. And you know what? That's really sad. It means she truly despises it when people like you, who were born without a fragment of the ability needed to sense magic, deny that she exists. You're lucky, Battler. Good thing I gave you that charm yesterday, right? Don't you realize what kind of curse Beatrice would have put on you by now if you hadn't been carrying it around? You really are lucky, Battler. Oh, that scorpion keychain? I thought that was just some cheap gift or something, but are you saying it really had some power? If it weren't for that, you'd be lying in that storehouse as a sacrifice with your face crushed by now. You're so lucky, Battler. I see. So if it weren't for that, I'd have been killed by now.
Battler, why don't you believe in Beatrice? Even though she exists. Right now, over there, look. Hey, I'll bet you want to believe it now. Believe it, and thank me for giving you that charm. If it weren't for that, you'd be in the storehouse right now. But then, maybe you would have saved someone else in exchange, right? Right then, I burst into laughter. Playing witches had been pretty fun up until a second ago, but unfortunately that last one seemed to be too much for me to gloss over. Ha 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 ha! Then it's all useless, isn't it, Maria? If that's true, then I'm sorry, but it's all useless. When Maria saw me suddenly start laughing, she stopped. Even though she didn't understand what I was laughing at, she realized it wouldn't be pleasant for her. I thought it might hurt you, so I didn't say it earlier, but... Well, I thought I'd put that charm you gave me in my pocket, but I must have dropped it somewhere. So the charm can't be the only reason I'm alive now. And even though I should have been cursed by the witch, I'm perfectly fine. Sorry, but I don't believe in things I don't see with my own eyes. Sixth senses? Wavelengths? Magic sensitivity? Sorry, but I don't believe in fake stuff like that. When I hear the girls in class start talking about how good or bad their ability to sense the supernatural is, it pisses me off. I don't know how much grandfather is paying you, but if you're trying to talk me to join in some cult, believe me, you won't be able to do it that easily. Battler-sama. You guys are free to believe whatever you want. However, when it comes to the things I believe, the one who decides is always me. Sorry, but I can't believe in something as shady as Beatrice until I've seen her with my own eyes. I spoke forcefully and sharply. Then Maria started cackling again. Well, that's just fine, isn't it? Eventually, even people like you with totally mismatched wavelengths will be able to see Beatrice. Very soon, she will revive. Beatrice will revive. Once that happens, she's promised to talk with me and play with me a lot. There'll be absolutely no need for you to doubt or for us to force you to believe. She will appear very soon. After a meal, some people tend to head to the bathroom, while others prefer to relax for a bit. It seemed that several people had left the parlor, just like I did when I went to the kitchen to drink some water. In the end, Aunt Natsu reluctantly retracted her order that everyone remain packed into the parlor, on the condition that no one headed out on their own or strayed too far. In any case, if 11 people are shut up in the same room starting early in the morning, the air will start to stagnate. Also, quite some time had passed, so everyone was starting to recover from the shock of that morning, and their sense of danger might have been weakening too. However, it was a certain fact that 6 people had been killed inside this mansion, so no one was completely negligent. So whenever they went out into the hallway for a breath of fresh air, trying to act tough, they would quickly get scared of standing there, isolated, and would eventually return to the parlor. I guess it's like the north wind and the sun. If you force someone to stay shut in, they'll resist, but if you tell them to do whatever they want, they'll come back obediently. People really do like not doing what they're told. When the servants finished cleaning up from the meal, they returned obediently to the parlor, just as Aunt Natsu had told them to, and sat on a sofa near the entrance, patiently awaiting orders. Maria, almost as though she had suddenly finished playing witches,
had returned to the pure Maria I knew well, saying ooh ooh. What in the world happened back there? I hadn't felt even an atom of the presence of this person called Beatrice, who was supposedly standing behind me, invisible. However, it felt like I'd glimpsed a little part of that presence inside Maria. You're right. When Maria starts talking about witches, her personality changes. Battler-kun, you also saw it down by the beach yesterday, right?
You mean that scorpion keychain? No, I don't mean like when her feelings were hurt. I'm talking about her having a dual personality or something.
Yeah, that happens sometimes too. That thing Maria did when she was talking about the magic circle does happen every now and then. It's freaky though. Apparently Jessica had spotted that kee-hee-hee-hee Maria a few times. I just happened to catch it at a bad moment and was pretty freaked out seeing it for the first time.
So what is that? Does Maria have a dual personality or something? Or are you saying that her spiritual sense really is that strong, and she's being possessed by a spirit or whatever?
No, I don't think it's that. Haven't you ever experienced it? When you were small, didn't you ever want to be someone other than yourself? When humans are born, no one has any individuality. However, when they reach their growth period, their sense of self starts to be born. They want to be different than other people. But since everyone else in their class is learning the same things at the same rate and being forced into the same lifestyle, of course they aren't going to find anything that makes them different from everyone else around them. Once they realize that, the first thing they do is start breaking the rules in what's called their rebellious stage. Since everyone else follows the rules, they want to show off their individuality by breaking them. So even those who try to act tough, mocking everyone around them and calling them childish, can actually be viewed as cute kids searching for themselves, if you look at it this way. Well, I'm lecturing about all this like I'm so smart, but I actually got it secondhand from George Anarchy. I myself was one of those embarrassing guys who thought it was cool to act like a little bastard. Well, that was when I was at the age where you try to show off for the opposite sex. The main feature of the growing period lies in an impulse to break away from your life as a kid, like a chick trying to crack open the shell of their egg. Do you know what makes children and adults different?
Age? Or do you mean size?
No, it's experience. Adults can look down on children because children have very little life experience. The reason they snort at everything children say is because they think kids know nothing about the real world. Yeah, I understand that. When you're a kid, you talk like you've got life all figured out somehow, trying to act like an adult. No matter what kids say, adults just snort at them and say they're too naive or that they'll understand when they get older or something. Well, it's probably true, but to a kid it's just annoying, like they're being looked down upon.
I get it. It's a question of knowledge and experience. Well, I guess you're right that there's no reason to respect a person for their age if they've just wasted their lives.
Therefore, during the period when they try to separate themselves from other children, they also try to take on personality traits different from those around them. And if knowledge and experience is what separates kids and adults...
I get it. If they know something no one else knows, it becomes part of their identity.
When I was in elementary school, I'd learn things no one else knew, get things no one else had, wear things no one else wore, and became a bit of a hero for it. I'll bet you've done the same thing, Battler. Yeah. There was definitely an age when I wanted to excel in some skill or other. I see. So that's because I was trying to separate myself from being a child. Or go through my growing period, in other words.
If you put a positive spin on it, the growing period forces you to separate yourself from others, thereby pushing you to gain skills and knowledge no one else has. This is also interesting from a sociological standpoint. Because people hate being like everyone else, they try to learn skills other people don't know. In this way, society can acquire the broad range of skills it needs to survive. The quality of the gods' programming is truly surprising.
Well, unique personality traits can also be negative, right? Like if, say, everyone in the class was studying hard, but I was the only one slacking off trying to stand out.
Okay, that last bit really was true about me. It's only recently that I've been able to thank the middle school teacher who slapped me after school.
But well, I tried to jump over things no one else could. Sprint as fast as I could, trying to lap those guys with good grades when we did a marathon. I just felt like doing it. It was in my nature that if I couldn't study well, then at least I could get back at them by exercising. I see. So I really did go through a proper growing period. I guess boys really do tend to focus more on physical stuff. But you know, girls of the same age tend to focus more on mental, spiritual things. I'll bet there were groups of girls in your classes that got really interested in fortune telling and their spiritual senses. Yeah, there were. They'd come over asking me for my sign and my blood type, and then they'd laugh. Ah, I thought so. It really got on my nerves. No matter which class you go to, girls like fortune telling. Deciding whether your spirit sense is strong or weak, what your sensitivity is, whether you can see the unseeable, that kind of thing definitely happened to me.
That's because fortune telling and spiritual senses are things that aren't taught in school. To girls who tend to be more introverted, it's a genre that's easy to build an identity upon, and one that holds a lot of interest for them. Just like how when boys enter their growing period, they start acting tough and rebel against adults. When girls enter their growing period, they start getting interested in that kind of thing. Well, I didn't though. So, Maria having so much interest in the occult, isn't that rare among girls her age? Even if we accept that, I wonder if it explains that creepy dual personality thing. Actually, I think I probably could accept that explanation, more or less. As you just said, becoming an adult means gaining knowledge and experience. So, to gain that, it's necessary for children to learn all sorts of things and break free from childhood. However, there are certain convenient delusions that you see often in the world of children, both now and in the past. Do you know what I mean?
You see it all the time in manga and anime, right? It's kind of like that. Like you've got memories from a previous life that start to resurface. Like you're being possessed by the soul of the great something or whatever. Or it could be that a sleeping gene gets reawakened. Or maybe a sealed power or memory returns. There's all kinds. For some reason, stuff like that's really popular at that age. Why's that?
All of those examples you've just mentioned are illusions that let children immediately add to their sum of knowledge and experience. If a 9-year-old girl says she has a 1,000-year-old witch possessing her, then she gains a 1,009-year-old identity. So basically, studying is annoying, but these delusions are convenient for people who want to brag about having a skill no one else has, amazing the people around them. So you could brag about something without having to work hard or study. I see. Isn't that a kid's greatest dream? Furthermore, in their desire to separate themselves from being kids, they always project an image of their ideal self. And it's not rare for that desired self to become an alternate personality. Even you, Badler-kun, probably had a slightly different personality at home and at school, right? It'd probably be embarrassing if your friends at school saw how you were at home. At school, you tried to project yourself as you want to be, but home is where you're your true self. So, in other words, I'm changing my personality depending on the situation. Are you trying to say having multiple personalities is actually really common? A girl who's a fan of the occult might say she's being possessed or awakened. Honestly, there's some kids who change their personality so much it's creepy. And some boys do it too, right? Guys who say they've blown their top and suddenly turn into some overplayed violent character. I'll bet they think it's pretty cool, but it's painful to watch. Let's sum all this up. So you're saying that even if a girl about Maria's age shows a creepy second personality like she did a minute ago, it isn't such a rare or unusual thing? Simply put, that's right. Identity is an important factor when building up one's sense of self. If you make fun of it, it could actually cause children to go back into their shells. So it's important to go along with them to some degree. Although the broad-mindedness of the parent determines whether they play along in full or not. Haneke, I can't believe you're single. You sound like you've already raised kids through middle school. So, I wonder if Aunt Rosa also knew much about Maria's dual personality. She knew about it. Just between us, Aunt Rosa really hated it. She said it was unpleasant that Maria was becoming increasingly isolated from the rest of the class. So anytime Maria started talking about the occult or laughing like a witch, she'd slap her. And it looks like Maria stopped talking that way in front of her. Maybe that thing back there was just a little game from a girl facing her growing period. Just a girl trying to show that she was different and independent by holding interest in the witches and the occult. And since she wanted to be different from herself, young as she was switching between her normal personality and the personality of her ideal, a witch. At first, I'd found that very disturbing. But after being lectured by George Anarchy, I felt like this was a path everyone walked down at one time or another. I haven't told anyone, but when I was in kindergarten, I joined up with a little gang of kids trying to form an Earth Defense Force, saying we'd help to protect peace on Earth. My face turns red when I remember how, during what we called battle practice, we would chant, EDF, EDF. Just like usual, Maria was relaxing, immersed in the TV, ooh-oohing, and laughing just like any girl her age. But on the inside, another personality, that of the ideal witch she respected and blindly accepted, was sleeping. But that wasn't anything extraordinary. It was perfectly natural for a girl of her age. I've calmed down a little. The shock from my bizarre experience in the kitchen just now is fading away. If I hadn't talked to Anarchy and Jessica, I might still be frightened by the idea that an invisible witch is standing right behind me. However, can I really accept that as an explanation for what happened back there? If it had just been Maria, I could have explained it as the fickle delusions of a growing girl. But Genji-san, Kanon-kun, and Kumisawa Bachan had also been there. None of them had denied what Maria said. They silently accepted that Beatrice exists. I was starting to feel a little uneasy. Aunt Ava's position was that no 19th person existed, that the crime was an inside job tied to the family quarrels. On the other hand, Aunt Natsuhi's position was that the culprit was hiding somewhere outside the mansion. So she rejected the possibility of an inside job and supported the idea that a 19th person existed. And in the kitchen, Maria and the servants had also supported the idea of a 19th person. But according to them, this 19th person isn't human. They said it was an invisible witch, carry out some mysterious plan. Is there a 19th person? Or not? And is the culprit human? Or a witch? For some reason, I couldn't just laugh off any of these possibilities. Not even the most ridiculous story about the witch. Jessica, all I know about the story of the witch is that the adults made it up to keep the kids too scared to enter the forest. But is the story different here in the mansion? I feel the same way you do, okay? I think it was just a stupid ghost story that parents made up so their kids would listen to them. But I can't deny that the atmosphere inside the mansion makes it a little hard to say out loud. After all, Grandfather has proclaimed that Beatrice exists. And because of their position, the servants can't doubt that. Even Uncle Kraus and Aunt Natsuhi don't want to get into a fight with him, so on the surface, they go along with it. So it's probably fair to say that doubting the existence of Beatrice is taboo to those who live and work in this mansion. Unlike the rest of us, who only come here once a year. Is that right? Jessica took a deep breath in admiration. It looked like Aniki had guessed right. It's just like you say, no one really believes it on the inside, but on the outside they accept that she exists. See, it's just like the way some people care about God. Even if they know God doesn't exist, they feel like it would be uncouth if they actually said it out loud. How do you think the servants feel about it? Are they just going along with it because Grandfather, their employer, says that she exists? Well, I don't really know the details. But between the servants, the story about Beatrice has been treated sort of like a sort of ghost story. Remember yesterday when Shannon was talking to us about down by the beach? That story about how one night when she was doing the rounds in the mansion, she saw something unsettling? She did say something like that, didn't she? Back then, I thought she was just being really nice to help improve Maria's mood. But it felt like she was serious when she said it. That's right. She definitely said it. She definitely said the same kind of thing that Genji and the rest had all unanimously declared back in the kitchen. In addition, some servants have also seen will-o'-the-wisps and glittering butterflies dancing around. Kanon-kun also saw something like that when he went patrolling one night. And recently, you often hear servants talking about strange footsteps heard inside the mansion near midnight. We've whispered together that the Beatrice Sama in the portrait sometimes makes herself invisible and walks through the mansion. It happened a while ago, but even I have heard footsteps while patrolling at night that resemble these stories. That's right, she definitely said that. Exactly the same thing that I had been told just now. Ah, but there's nothing to be afraid of. Beatrice Sama is another ruler of this mansion, separate from the master. So there's no need to be unnaturally afraid. If you respect her, I hear she won't do anything bad. However, she can be quite terrifying if you don't respect her, right? Correct. I've heard that. Just before I began working here, someone who spoke badly about Beatrice-sama fell down the stairs and quit after receiving a large injury to their back. Because of that, there was a rumor between the servants that Beatrice-sama's anger had been brought down upon this person.
If you don't respect her, you'll suffer her wrath and get hurt. So, to the servants, Beatrice's existence is just as credible as the story that, if you pull pranks on Inari-san, you'll receive Kitsune-sama's curse. Of course, even though everyone accepts that curses and the like don't exist in the modern era, people are still afraid and still have a little respect for them. You often see it when, in a residential area, someone is building a house and they call a Shinto priest for a ceremony to honor the god of that plot of land. You might think that was just a big waste of time and money. But it is said that if the workers don't do that, a big accident will occur, so they never neglect to do it. You also hear about how, if an Inari shrine is carelessly removed during a town replanning, there'd be a curse by Kitsune-sama. I think I might have read somewhere that when the occupying forces were trying to expand an airport, they tried to remove an Inari-san that was in the way, and the workers kept getting struck down by mysterious fevers. Even in modern cities like Tokyo, it wasn't rare to see modern buildings packed all around an old Inari shrine, leaving the shrine itself untouched. And this wasn't limited to Japan. It's probably similar to how foreigners baptize babies. If I remember right, by Christian doctrine, if unbaptized souls have even the slightest amount of sin, they will still go to hell. Putting water on a child's forehead doesn't do anything but make them cry. But if by doing just that, parents can prevent their children from going to hell, they will happily go through with that ceremony. In short, even in this modern society of reason, we were still unable to throw away every trace of belief and fear. You could even say that we accept certain sorts of supernatural things, though in a passive way. Maybe the only difference on this island is that Beatrice is the object of that worship. So, in other words, if anything happens that doesn't seem explainable in human terms, it's called the work of Beatrice. I think Shannon-chan said it herself. Windows and doors and locks that were tightly shut would be open the next time you went to check them. Lights that should have been on went out, and lights that should have been out were turned on. And if I remember, even Jessica was joking about it, saying it was also the work of Beatrice when she couldn't find her bag in the morning. She remembers pretty good. Normally you'd say some little imps took them, but on this island it's Beatrice. Well, it's all pretty stupid though. This mansion has been standing for about 30 years now, hasn't it? It's natural for things that old to get their fair share of ghost and occult stories. Like the 7 mysteries at a school. But that's where I'll spin the chessboard around. Huh? Simply put, on this island, there's a rule that Beatrice gets blamed for anything that couldn't have been done by humans. Things that humans can't do. How many humans are here? 18. In other words, the culprit is using the rules of this island to make it look like a witch committed this crime, which proves that they desperately want us to think a 19th person did it. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. What do you mean you don't like it? Let's assume some invisible 19th person exists and wants people to know they exist. If it were me, I'd do it with even more perfect timing. What do you mean by perfect timing? Well, the crime took place sometime between the middle of the night and dawn, right? We had some people who were talking together until the middle of the night, some people on night shifts, and some people who'd returned to their rooms and were sleeping. Everyone's alibi is really vague, so there's plenty of room to suspect that the crime was an inside job. George Anarchy, and Ava probably told you too, right? That there's a good chance this crime was an inside job?
Yes, I guess.
In other words, if this invisible 19th person really exists and wants to let us know it, this first crime was a complete failure. No, in the first place, they chose the wrong time of day to do it. If this invisible 19th person really wanted to show themselves, they had to make sure that the crime took place under conditions which proved that the remaining 12 people were all innocent. As long as there's a single human we can suspect, this 19th person's attempt to highlight their presence fails. That's why near midnight, when everyone's alibis are at their vaguest, the 19th person's existence is also at its vaguest. And yet, the culprit chose to commit the crime at that time.
By committing the crime then, one of the 18 would obviously be suspected. And yet, someone handed Maria the letter and called themselves a witch, even though everyone denies they did it.
In other words, you're trying to say one of the 18 is trying to make it look like a 19th person called Beatrice exists? That's a pretty crazy idea. I think Mom's theory about someone hiding outside the mansion is a bit more credible. Battler, don't tell me you actually think someone in this room is the culprit. I do. Someone's trying to force us to accept that Beatrice exists. That's right. This whole thing started as far back as the letter last night. I don't have any basis or proof. But with the chessboard turned around, this is my best guess.
Seriously? That's too crazy. You sure you haven't been reading too many weird detective novels? However, it's an angle we can't ignore. Whether there's a 19th person or not, the culprit's definitely planning something involving that rule about this island. Just now, listening to Battlerkin talk, I remembered something that's a little disturbing.
Something disturbing?
Yes. Do you remember Beatrice's letter? It said that Beatrice was going to collect interest. And by interest, it mentioned everything of the Ashuramia family.
Jessica and I thought back on what Maria had read aloud the previous night. Yeah, it said that. It definitely said that. That the collection of the interest was going to take place shortly, but if the riddle of the gold could be solved, she'd lose that right.
Grandfather received the gold and rebuilt the Ashuramia family. In other words, according to Beatrice, everything created using the gold as capital counts as part of the interest. Which means...
That's pretty scary for a joke, Anarchy. You don't mean everything of the Ashuramia family. In other words, everything that grandfather gave birth to. In other words, everyone with grandfather's blood flowing through their veins?
If you interpret the letter that way, these murders are just Beatrice legitimately collecting interest. If that's the case, these crimes will continue. Because the collection of interest is still only halfway completed.
George turned around, looking over the parlor. There were still many people who held the name Ashuramia. And because Goda-san and Shannon-chan had been killed, we knew that not even the servants were safe, despite lacking the Ashuramia name. So are they planning to kill us all? But that's weird, George Nisan. In that case, why only 6 people? They should have been able to kill a lot more. At worst, it should have been possible for them to assault everyone while they were still sleeping and kill them in a single night. Why didn't they do that?
The special clause. If someone manages to solve the riddle of the gold, their right to the interest will be lost. And remember how the letter ended? It challenged us all to solve the riddle of grandfather's gold.
Jesus, it looks like we're finally understanding the culprit's message. In other words, the culprit's telling us to try and solve the riddle on that epitaph grandfather had made. On top of that, they're saying if we just sit around, they'll keep collecting the interest.
I realize this is all based on several guesses that are way out there, but not everything that happens in this world fits together in a perfect line. Most of the events we don't understand and are only individual points. By fitting them into a straight line, we're beginning to understand. When the points at either end of the line are really close, the line itself is more logical and easier to understand. And when those points are really far away, the opposite is true. It's the distance between these points that makes us say our guesses are way out there. However, if the distances we span are too narrow, that means our thinking will be too narrow too. Is there a difference between making guesses and reasoning? Am I just using easily made guesses to try and force this crime into a pattern I can understand? No, that's not it. When you're lost in the dark and searching around with your hands, what you're doing is relying on your imagination and making guesses. Only imagination can find the points that need to be tied together. Reasoning is nothing more than the act of drawing lines between them. If you can't imagine, you can't reason. What I'm doing right now might be way out there, but I'm sure it isn't a mistake either. Only the power of imagination can pull clues out from the darkness. And then I can use the power of reasoning to tie those clues together. It was a lot like the process of searching out an enemy's weak spot and striking. It's okay if I'm way out there. Find a weak point first. Then we can think about how to strike. Right now is the time to find points we can tie together later. And with all of that wild and varied speculation, I think now is a good time to pause before we continue with this whole scene. It's a long parlor chat. And more on it next time. Thank you for watching, and see you then.